In this episode of Growing Your Sense of Self Through Self-Defense, I'm going to give an example of using X-ray vision to look into a person to understand their motivation and demonstrate the great value in doing this type of thing. And the person I'm choosing to look into is Stephen Paddock, the past weekend the person who was a mass murderer in Las Vegas. We have official answers to the who, what, where, when, how kinds of questions. Official versions or answers to those. However incomplete or accurate they may be, they've been given as answers, at least for now, to those questions. But what's not been answered is the why question, the most important question, the question you have to understand the answer to in order to prevent similar events in the future of that type, or to encourage the understanding why answers or help you to recreate situations that you want to have repeat cases of. But you need to understand the why. Now, we have multiple speculations about what the why, what the motivations for Paddock might be. And these include things like, well, he was converted to Islam and radicalized, or he had a lot of gambling debts and he was angry about that situation, losing a lot of money. He was mentally ill. He was on some drugs for psychosis, for sort of treating psychological conditions, Valium. He might have been part of a conspiracy, which I'm going to talk about that later, so we'll put that one aside for right now. Or he was just evil. Now, these answers, supposed answers to the question of why, are at best second or third order answers to the question. They don't get to the primary motivation for why Paddock behaved as he did. And what you need to do to get to the primary is you need to peel back the layers of onions around the why. So, for example, taking some of these speculations, so say, well, he was evil. That's the why he was evil. All right, well, why was he evil? Well, did he start evil as a baby? He was an evil baby? Is there such a thing as that? Was he evil right before he committed the murders? Was he evil then? Not why did he commit the murders and become evil? So to claim he was evil, that's why he did it, that's dodging the question. There's something behind that. Why was he evil? Or he was gambling, he went into debt. Well, why was he into gambling? Was it addiction? Why was he addicted to gambling? What was driving the addiction? There's whys behind that. Or he converted to Islam and was radicalized. Well, why would a guy in his 60s look to change their religion? Why would a person become radicalized in a new religion? And even if being radicalized, why express the radicalization in the way that he did, the horrific way that he did, killing of many people, wounding of many people? So those things don't go to the why. And I think it's a sad commentary on our understanding of the human condition that the why is not so obvious, that we look for all of these other second and third order things. And I believe I understand why we do that, why we don't look for what is the obvious, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first I want to talk about some of the proposals people have been throwing around. It's like, well, we don't want this to happen again, so we should take the following kinds of actions. And there are things like, well, let's ban all guns, or at least ban certain types of guns, or maybe ban all weapons, or anything that can be used as a weapon. And maybe we should ban concerts, or large gatherings of any kind, or tall buildings from which people can take advantage of for whether it's sniping or other types of weapons that they might have if we didn't yet ban the weapons. Or maybe we should ban people moving around in public without bodyguards and without body armor. And maybe we should require security up the wazoo. Everything, everywhere you go, have somebody there checking this and checking that and seeing what you're thinking and seeing what you're saying and following you around. I mean, all these things are freedom limiting, and they don't go after the why, which is really the fundamental thing. Anybody proposes any of these types of responses, so not let this happen again, they're one of two things. They're really being non-rational. They're really seeking to avoid what the real issues are. Or they're being disingenuous and they have ulterior motives that tend to be freedom-limiting motives. People who want power and control. So what was the reason? What was the motivation? Why did Paddock behave as he did? Well, what do we know about Paddock? Apart from, or in addition to, the fact that he killed a whole lot of people. Well, we know his dad was a serial bank robber. He was on the FBI's most wanted list for several years. We know that he did not have close contact with family. That he was largely a loner. He did not have committed relationships. He had a girlfriend for a few years. His girlfriend called him a kind and gentle and quiet man. But a person who goes with a guy like that, they tend not to be too reality-based. And people who saw them in public, like they were regulars at a Starbucks, and the people who worked at the Starbucks said he was often very, very rude to her, demeaning of her, belittling of her, and he had a strong or big temper. We know that he liked to gamble. We know that he used a lot of prostitutes when he was in Las Vegas. That at least one of the prostitutes said that he was paranoid and obsessive and liked to engage in violent sex acts. You know, pretending that she was being raped or something by him, and she had to scream. He used to say that I was born bad. He would tell this prostitute, I was born bad. So these are things what we know about Stephen Paddock. Now, what does that tell us about a person's, the strength of their sense of self? So now we start using some X-ray vision when we know these things, the what's that the guy did, the what's that the guy said. What does that tell us when we look into this person? Well, we know he's self-absorbed. We know that he is, if not uncaring, or not only uncaring towards others, he's actually hostile towards others. He doesn't see others as the center of their own universe. He sees them as something he can use or as targets for him to use. His use of prostitutes, which is showing, and as being a loner, showing that he lacks the ability to be intimate with others. To see yourself as born bad, that's a disempowering statement. That's a victimizing, I am a victim statement. So I don't have power. If I'm born this way, right, I can't change the way I'm born. That's my genes, it's there. So that's a surrendering of power. The anger that he has, whether he was addicted to gambling or he just got a rush from it, that's a way of escaping who you are. These are qualities of a person with a low sense of self. And it carried to the extreme, as he was in these cases, even apart from the murdering, is a dirt low sense of self. This is the why for Paddock's act. Now, he didn't have to commit the mass murder. It's a question of like, well, at what point does the anger get to that point? At what point does the uncaring or hostility towards others get to the point of committing mass murder or wanting to kill other people? It's a matter of degree. It's really not of a completely different thing. It's just a matter of degree. Yeah, not a lot of people commit mass murder. There's a lot of people on Valium, over 1 million or 14 million prescriptions in a year, but they're not committing mass murder. A lot of people with diagnosed with some form of mental illness not committing mass murder. A lot of people with gambling debts. There are a lot of people who are Muslims. They don't commit mass murder, not in large numbers. So this guy with a very low sense of self, he got to a point, what do you call it, a breaking point or whatever, it was in him, it was within him to do the evil acts. Not that he was evil, but he did evil acts. Is how he perceived of himself, how he felt about himself, how he thought about himself. So if you want to prevent these types of events, to this extreme or to something else, you don't do things like, ban this and ban that, or whatever. you can commit mass murder. Serial killers do that. They may not use weapons at all or guns at all. They choke somebody, beat somebody to death, maybe poison somebody. You can kill a lot of people at once with poison, with the driving of the vehicles in the crowds. There's a lot of things you can do that can express what lies within. And trying to stop all those other things, no, he could have found other avenues. None of those solutions or proposals mean anything. The guy could find something else. The core is to see the importance of the sense of self. If you want to stop this stuff, recognize the fundamental, the linchpin importance of the sense of self for an individual, especially your own, and work to strengthen it. Yours is the only one you can change. You can't change anyone else's. But one thing you can do is see the strength of the sense of self in others with the X-ray vision, with awareness of what it is that reveals the strength of a sense of self in another's words and actions. If you do that, you may be able to be of help in having that person recognize where they are in need. And if not that, if the person wants to stay in denial about it or refuses to recognize it and do anything about it, then you have the possibility to be able to limit the damage that person can do. And there's ways you can do that without limiting their freedom. It's just limiting the impact, negative impacts they can have on others. But it's an individual thing. It's not everybody needs to give up this and everybody needs to give up that because there's a couple guys around, we're not even going to try to figure out who they are, that have this problem of a dirt low sense of self. No, there's a lot of people with that, and we've done it to ourselves with the way we parent primarily. And in the fact that we don't even think about it, we don't even talk about the importance of the sense of self and its value in our lives. Now let me loop back around to the notion of conspiracy. Maybe this guy found other people he was motivated by, wanting to connect with other people who had the same low sense of self and his desire to project out their anger and their hostility to others. And I don't care about them because I don't care about me. So they make a connection. There is a connection that one could make in these conspiracies when people get together to do these evil acts, conspire together. But the problem for the couple, or the three, however many were involved, is the same as it was for the individual. You don't conspire. This guy could not have aspired with somebody who was a noble, high-integrity person to say, let's kill a bunch of people. It wouldn't have worked. He had to find a like-wounded soul to commit that kind of a crime. And you don't address that by saying, well, let's ban all communications with anybody, because that communication may be conspiring to commit murder or other bad acts. No, that's ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as the other things you want to ban. The goal is to look within. That's the goal. Use your X-ray vision, first on you, but then to see in other people. Raise awareness in yourself of others. And if we do that collectively, we have a chance to blunt these types of events. And we start to walk and recognize that, well, here's a person who, the way they are, the way they behave, yeah, it wouldn't surprise if they act out. It wouldn't be like, oh, that came out of the blue, like you often hear this guy's brother was talking about. How do you, comes out of the blue if a guy says I was born bad? That's not coming out of the blue. There's a lot of information around that says this is something not so well with this guy. So you can reach out and look to connect with the person. If you become aware of the value of the sense of self, if you become aware of ways to grow the sense of self, you can be of some value to others. In the end, they have to grow it themselves. In the end, they have to recognize, accept responsibility, and work to it. But failing those things, you know that this is a person, in some ways, is a time bomb. Maybe not so much for others, maybe for themselves. Maybe they hurt themselves. Not a good thing either. But there's the goal. There's the motivation for this guy. This is the answer to the why. Why did Stephen Paddock commit mass murder? Because he had a dirt low sense of self. He did nothing about it. Nobody helped him or tried to help him. Nobody saw that in him or sought to warn others, to warn him. And that's, at some point, it doesn't have to lead to that. It could have led to something else, but not pleasant. So that's on anybody who interacts with him. But you have a circle of friends. You have yourself. Where does your strength of self lie? And where is it in the people that you know? Are you using your X-ray vision? If you want to stop those kinds of things, not necessarily on that scale, but on a smaller scale, somebody beating their spouse or smacking their kids, or stealing from somebody or cheating on somebody, this is where it lies. And there's nothing around. I mean, if you don't fix that, there's nothing else you can change outside in the world that's going to prevent them from doing something unhealthy, something negatively impacting on self or others. There then is the value of what this program is trying to do. And I encourage you, I urge you to embrace not only this program, but to share it. Awareness of the value of the sense of self. Awareness of ways to grow the strength of the sense of self. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Kamsahamnida.